Namaskaram, everybody. Uh, Good. So, my today's topic of discussion is wear resistance in screws and barrels. Friends, screws and barrels are most important features of your machine. At the same time, it is the most neglected aspects of your machines. Uh, why I'm saying that is because prior to this job, I was in machine selling, and when we used to go to the customer place, when we used to discuss about features of the machines, customers used to ask lots of questions like, what kind of motors you are going to give us? Is it a AC motor or servo motors? Which gearbox you are giving us? Or what kind of heater band you are giving us? But when it comes to screw barrel, at max they are asking, what kind of screw barrel you are giving us. And then our typical answer was, sir, this is an industrial standard nitrided screw barrels I am giving you. And they were kind of happy with those answers. Some knowledgeable customer may ask one more question like, is it possible to have a bimetallic screw barrel? And we used to say, yes, we can give you bimetallic. But nobody knows what is bimetallic, what you are purchasing. Uh, just to summarize our basics of the machines, let us understand what is the function of screws and barrels. In 1832, when first molding machine was developed, it was a plunger type molding machines, correct? So we used to put polymers inside the barrel, and then heater band used to melt the polymer. And then with plunger, we were forcing the material into the die. With new innovations of screw and barrel type, there is a misconception that barrel is doing all the heating and the screw is just conveying the material further, which is not the case. In the molding machines, whether it's extrusions or injections, what you are using right now, the prime cause by which your material is getting melted is because of the screw rotations, and which creates a phenomena called viscosity dissipations. And your barrel heating is just a secondary inputs. So let's understand this phenomena little bit in a brief, because this is very important. What is viscosity dissipations? If you see the pictures on the left hand side, okay, you can see the red circle there. That red circle is nothing but a melted polymer, okay. One side of that melted polymer is in touch with barrel ID, and one side of it is in touch with unmelted polymer beads basically. And what it does basically, when screw rotates, it's basically stretch these films, and because of this stretching and compressing, it generates the heat. The bottom picture can explain you in a much better way. So you can see that all it's doing is that from motors to gearbox to the screw, we are using electrical energy into mechanical energy, and that mechanical energy is basically melting your polymer. Next slide can explain you more properly. So this is a cross sections of polymer bits in your feed zone. Then you can see how it is melting section by section. So that's what is exactly happening in your screw and barrel, from feed zone to compression zone, and from compression zone to your metering zone. So your screw and barrel is nothing. So just to mention you, these photos we have taken from Dow Chemicals website. Okay. So maybe this picture can explain you more properly why screw required torque, why screw required power. Because when you stretch that films, this needs lots of power. So this is how energy conversion happens in your machines, from electrical power to mechanical power, and then because of the mechanical power, screw is rotating and your heat is generated. So if you have a machines, and if you really understand, this is what is exactly in your machine. Let's take an example. You can see the bottom side. If you know the specific heat of the polymer which you are processing, okay, and also if you know the average melt temperature of that polymer, you yourself can calculate what should be the motor capacity of your machines. So here I have taken an example of extrusion line. Let's say we have HDP sheet extrusion line, and I wanted to have output of 1000 pound per hour. Suppose that's my desire to do that. Then what is the energy I'm going to require in a system? So what I will do, I know the average melt temperature. I also know the ambient temperature at the room temperature at which polymer is there, and I just know the temperature difference which I have to achieve. Now you know the specific heat of that polymer, that you can Google it also. Once you will know that, use this formula and you will end up having the converted HP. In this case it is coming somewhere around 74 HP. And we are aware that because in an energy conversion some energy loss can happen. So add 30% to that, just to considerations of the energy loss that can happen because of the conversions. So what you will get is the power required to melt your polymer. Now we know that we cannot use 100% of the power capacity. You can add 20% more onto that, and you will arrive to a number which will be very near what you are having in your machines right now. So this is exactly what is happening in your machines. Now what is a critical point? Friends, when you buy a machines, okay, there is a clearance given between screw and barrels. How to calculate the clearance of the screw and barrels? If you are aware of the ID of barrel, let's say 45 mm, just multiply it by 0.001. That is the clearance which you are getting in your screw barrel when the screw and barrels are new. And what is a critical point? It is a point after which the screw barrel will not function the way it should function. That means lots of unmelted polymer will go ahead, or lots of other issues can happen. In extrusion it is actually directly measurable because there is a loss in output. So what is the critical point? When you buy a fresh screw barrels, there is a clearance given, and once that clearance become 2.5 times, okay, that's what we call a critical point. Beyond this, you are going to make loss, or you can see you are not going to have the optimal profit or quality which you have expected from your machines. So as a processor, can we avoid this? No, we cannot avoid this. What best we can do, we can postpone this wear. I don't want to go much into this. These are the calculations, how you can calculate the clearance and how you can make a chart of all the machineries you are having in your plant. What is the critical point of each and every machines? And every 10 months, 12 months, when you do cumulative maintenance or something like this, you can just check whether the clearance has gone beyond this point or not. If it has gone, please address this issue. Do not continue to run your machines, because somewhere you are sacrificing with the quality of your products. What happens after critical points? If you are extrusion machine processors, definitely your kg per output will reduce, and you will have a degraded articles and all those things. It is surprising for us sometimes when we go to the injection molding processes, and when we say that, do you think wear has happened? And the answer is no, we don't think so wear has happened, because nothing has changed in the cycle time. But when we actually go on a shop floor and when we speak with the operator, we realize that operator did change the refilling time. It's just that it is still not challenging the cooling time, and that's why the cycle time is same, yet the wear has happened. Now, does that mean that we should continue to run the machines? You should not, because somewhere you are sacrificing with the quality, knowingly or unknowingly. We don't know how to check that quality, but if you have a very stringent process to check the quality part, you will come to know that it is not producing good part. And definitely it affects the wet variation also. Some of the example, but we can see, this is a live case study. There was a client in Indore who was having twin extrusion machineries. They were into the pipe manufacturing, and they were having 9 machines, okay. When they purchased these new machines, the targeted throughput was 340 kg per hour. That's how they have started the machines. But after 12 months, the machine was running at 325 or to 315 kg per hour. So then we decided to calculate the average output loss which has happened per hour. It almost came 12 kg. That's the loss per machines that company did that particular year. When we calculate the total output loss on that given year, it came 98,000 kg, which machine could not produce on that given year. The company was having 9 machines. Okay, if you calculate 3 weeks of actual productions into the 9 machines, it was almost 270 days of production loss has happened, which were not calculated basically. So we can say that the machine was not used as per the best of capacity. In injection molding, you can't actually see a huge production loss because, as I said, sometimes your cooling time can compensate your productions. That doesn't mean that it is still giving a good quality. Somewhere it is affecting your quality. So why wear happens? As I said, there is no way you can completely stop the wear. Wear is going to happen. And what are the reasons for it? This itself is a very big subject. It's very difficult to cover these things in a few minutes. But there are typically four kinds of wears. The primary reason wear happens is because metal to metal wear. Why metal to metal wear happens? Unfortunately, in extrusion or injection molding machines, the assembly screw is cantilever assembly. Okay, so your one side is always going to be free. And if you put fillers or if the diameter of screw is very high because of the self weight, somehow, some way, two surfaces are going to come in touch with each other. Which two surfaces? The barrel ID and the screw OD. Now, with our eyes we cannot see. We see that screw and barrel surface are very smooth, but actually it is nothing but a peak and valley. And two high points under tremendous shears comes in contact with each other. It creates welds between each other, and because the screw is rotating, it is rupturing the steel, whichever is the weak one. And that's how the wear starts in your machines. So there are many reasons for this. As I said, the alignment and the deflections and the cantilever kind of assembly, these are the reasons. What is abrasive wear? This is a secondary kind of wear. Especially people who are in molding machines, they put lots of fibers. People who are in PVC extrusion, they use lots of calciums. People who are using reprocessed material, they have lots of dirts and all those things. People who are in maybe in film extrusion line, they use roadside agloes and all those things. So all these hard particles, when they go inside your systems, they wear out your roots and ODs and everything, and that's how it starts damaging your system. Third kind of wear is a corrosion wear. If you are processing PVC, CPVC kind of polymer, or let's say PTFE where fluoric acid can attack your surface. Or even in some of the engineering polymers, we see there is a thing going on, HFFR, halogen flame retardant free, you have to use. That itself is a very corrosive in nature, which attacks your base metal and pitting starts happening. And that's how the wear happens. So this is a third kind of wear. Fourth wear is erosion wears. This phenomena mainly witnessed in people who are using groove feed extrusion lines. So near feed pocket, groove feed helps to feed the material a lot. But at the same time, it creates lots of back pressures on the sidewall of the flights. So instead of screw wearing out from the top, it starts wearing out from the sidewall. And then eventually, the feed capacity get reduced and you are starting to get lower and lower up. So then, actually my topic starts now. What is the evolution of wear protections? Okay, because we have realized there is lots of issues and we need to address that. First way is, can we play with the steel of screw and barrel? So this is very typical in India. We use EN19, EN24, EN41B, nitroalloy 135. Then in some of the corrosive applications, people use 17.4 pH stainless steel, HAS alloy, nickel alloy. Then some small diameter of screws where you require wear resistance as well as toughness. People go for a tool steel, which is D2 and H13. Those are the camel common steels. And then there are special tool steels. People usually import it from Europe, which is CPM 9V, CPM 10V. So these are the steels which you can use to make your screw. This is in our experience. Sometimes processor comes to us that one screw supplier is charging us X amount, another screw supplier is giving half of the price, the third screw supplier is charging us 3 times of what first supplier has given us. Why so much of difference is coming? All those difference in the cost of screw barrel is coming because of the selection of the material. If supplier is using D2 steel, it's a costly, as well as the manufacturing of that screw is going to be costly. Some cheaper screw supplier may give EN8 also, which is nothing but the recycled steel. It's a worst quality you can get in your machines. The quotation may look very attractive, but you may end up buying steel which is not suitable for your machines. So this is the material of constructions. What else we can do? We can do treatments on those steels. So surface treatments, very common is a flame hardening. Then comes nitriding. There are two kinds of nitriding you can do: gas and iron nitriding. Then eventually, people started doing plating also. Chrome plating became very famous. Then it became triple chrome plating. Then came welding. This weldings, what we are saying, is what you are getting in a bimetallic commonly, and we will touch base that. And nowadays, there is coatings also available. So PVD coatings, many of you may have seen a yellow screws in exhibitions on China stalls and all those things. So PVD coating is very common. This is also available. And then this is new in terms of when we are addressing you guys, because HVOF coating is also available from very beginning in the market. It's been 30 years. And extreme coating, that means my company, we do these coatings, and you will come to know how it is superior to all solutions till date evolved. So about base steel, I don't want to go in depth about it, but understand steel is nothing but it's a mixture of different elements. You have iron as a main element, and then rest of the thing is what you are adding in the steel. And if you see the chemistry, there are some good guys and there are some bad guys. Like phosphorus is something which is impurities, it should be less, and manganese should be less. Carbon can increase your hardness. So good fellows is also you have to use in proportions, because if I increase the percentage of chromium, I may end up having a less hot hardness. So screw suppliers, when they select the steel for the screw and barrels, they have to understand for which applications you are buying screw and barrels. Maybe the requirement is more on a corrosion side rather than abrasive side. So the typical standard material which I said, these are the four steel which Indian supplier will give a nitriding treatment on this steel, and they will give you the screw barrels. If you are having a corrosive materials, then again this is the chemistry of 17.4 pH and all those things. When I talk about this stainless steel, you can see that the percentage of chromium is more. That means it will give you more corrosion resistance. But at the same time, there you have to sacrifice on adhesive wear as well as abrasive wear. Then wear resistance, D2 itself can have a hardness up to 48 HRC. It's a good steel. But the problem here is that you can't use D2 for a very big size of screw, because this will become a very costly solutions. And same thing is with H13 also. So these two steel are very commonly used for the engineering polymers for the smaller diameters. And then there are these European solutions, crucible powder metallurgy. What they do, they add extra elements. You can see at the bottom, molybdenum and vanadium. These are the elements you can add in the screw. So what I'm trying to say here is that when you purchase a steel, you have a very limited scope with adding elements which can improve the property of the steel. So, and that's why the extra treatment needs to be done. What are the extra treatment we can do? Flame hardening. This is very common. I will not go into this. Nitriding is also very common. You have a steel, you put it in the nitriding tank for the certain period of time, and nitrogen penetrates inside the steel surface. So what it does, it creates a 40 or 50 microns of hard layer. Problem with this technology is that for first 2 to 3 months, the screw will work properly. Once the hard layer is wear out, suddenly the soft screw is exposed, and there is a sudden reductions in your output. The third type is a weld overplay. What people do, you have a screw, they make a groove on the flight, and then they use this welding materials to to fill that particular groove. And there are various grade available for this. And this is nothing but the bimetallic which you are purchasing globally. And that's why, there are some confusion. Sometimes people ask me, the bimetallics from China is cheaper, from Europe it is costly, and this and that. The idea is people are not aware what they are buying. So there are basically four kind of welding material people use. There are Colmone 56, Colmone 83, Stellite 6, and Stellite 12. And you can see the chemistry of it on a right hand side. The very best was available was Colmona 83. Why? Because it was having up to 25% of tungsten carbides. It can go up to 30-32% also, depending on the suppliers. Some people use the combination of different methods, like it could be plated screw with nitriding surface, it could be welding screw with the plating, depending on the supplier. Then there is something called tin coating also. The limitations of this process is it can be done only on a small diameter of screw, and the coating layer is only 4 to 5 microns. Again, once this 4 and 5 micron is wear out, your screw is exposed and it will start affecting your processing. So this is what we do as an extreme coating. We have a technology by which we put tungsten carbides on the entire screw surface area. That means OD as well as on the root diameter also. What are the benefit of it? Two things. First, unlike other bimetallics which can protect only on flight top, we can protect entire screw also. That means all the issues, all four kind of wears which industries have, that means adhesive, abrasive, corrosive, erosions, all can be addressed with one solutions. We can put layer of tungsten carbide of 250 micron or 125 micron depending on the requirement on the screw surface area. As I said, 125 to 250 micron layer is possible. What is the benefit with our coating? As I said, the very best bimetallic which was available globally can put only 25 to 32% of tungsten carbide, while with our coating we are putting 88% of tungsten carbides on the screw, which itself we can say it can give a 2 times to 3 times life of the bimetallic which you are using. Forget about the nitrided screw. Compared to nitrided screw, it can be 5 times, but compared to globally best bimetallic screws available, this can give at least 2 to 3 times. Some of the test which is available in the market, you can Google this also. The first test is for the corrosion resistance. So the test name is ASTM B117, where you have a piece which is tungsten coated with HVOF, the process which we did, and on the other hand you have a piece which was having hard chrome plating, and we submerged that into the particular solutions. Now when you compare it, the micro hardness of coating is almost similar to what other solutions are there, but our bond strength is very high. The porosity is less than 1%, but on a hard chrome plating it always have a fine cracks. So let me explain you what I'm trying to say here. On a left hand side, what you are seeing is a coating surface which does not have high porosity, while on the right hand side is a chrome plating surface which has lots of porosity. That means acid can enter up to the base level, base metal, and it can start pitting, while that will not happen in coatings. This is the surface of coating. You can literally see there is hardly any porosity or crack you will see on the surface of the coatings. This piece which was coated in solutions with compared to chrome plating, the chrome plated piece after 55 hours started pitting, while the coated piece lasted for 720 hours. That's the beauty of the corrosion resistance with the carbide coating. We can discuss more, but there is a limitations with the time. Same test is available with the abrasive wear also. This test is nothing but there is a rotating wheel, there is a metal piece which you have to fit on an instrument, and you can check what is the volume lost. There is a sand which is poured from the top, and after a certain period of revolutions they check each and every piece how much volume is lost of particular steel. So the nitrided steel, which is very common in India, has lost 68% of its volume. The Stellite 6 welded piece has lost 55% of its volume. The D2 lost 36%. If you see the coated screw, C1000 is what we give. It's our coated piece. it lost only 5.5% of its volume. That's how wear resistant ATU compared to abrasion. Same thing is adhesion also. A question may come that if we are going to improve a lots of property of my steel, is it not going to affect my barrel? No, it does not. That's the beauty of the solutions. The reason is tungsten carbide, molybdenum, vanadium, these are the elements which has a very high melting point. So when two surface comes in contact with each other, because of the higher shear, in nitridate case it's used to create weld which used to rupture the surface. But in this case, the welding is not going to happen. The screw is going to slip on the barrel surface, and because of that, this coated screw even complement the nitridate barrel life also. That's the beauty of the solution. These are all comparison, with different steel, what were the results. So what does it means to customers? Right now, if you are having a twin screws, we are quoting OD of these screws. If you are processing CPVC with twin screws, we can full encapsulate the screws. These are some of the live case studies and the results we got from our customers. When previously with the nitridate screws, they were having 7,000 hours of life. Right now, screw is running even after 15,000 hours of life. In one of the case where customer was having very high percentage of calcium carbonates, the screw was lasted only 4 months. With coating, it is lasting for 14 months. Same thing is with the film processor also. If you are using groove fit system, the another advantage with the coating is that you can use the coating only on the required area. It's not necessary that you have to protect entire screw. Like in this film extrusion line, LDP, LLDP or HDP does not wear a lot. It's just a groove fit which create pressures and wear out your screw. So we can put coating only on that pocket area, only 4-5 flights, and the screw will have a wonderful life. Some case studies of injection also, glass fed nylon with HFFR. D2 plating customer was using, he got 300,000 short with CPM 10V. They got 10 lakhs of short, and with our coated screw, it already crossed 40 lakhs, I think. Yeah, that's the. So you can check our website, case by case, material by material. We have lots of case studies. You know how coating has improved the life of screws and barrels. About our company, we are a USA based company. We have plant in Florida as well as in Houston, and from there we are catering Europe market and America market. In India, we have plant at Taloja, which is very near to Mumbai. We have head office in Chennai, as well as we have sales office in Mumbai also. This is a second generation USA based company. Till date, we have quoted more than 50,000 screws to various customers across the globe. Some of the list of our customer, from where you can buy this coating, by the way. You can approach your OEM. If you are injection molding processors, you can approach Milacron, Toshiba, Windsor. These are all our clients. They are aware of what we are giving. You can just tell them that I want to opt for this coating, and they will happily give you. Same thing is with extrusion lines also. If you are having Rolepal machines or Raju machines or Shubham machines or whomsoever you are having, you can just talk to them and they will happily give you these coatings. I'm not able to cover all the end processes because it's such a big list, but just to give some idea, we have clients from PVC segment, from engineering polymer segments, from metal injection molding segments. We have catered all kind of customers. We have rubber molding customers also, Desma Klockner. For more information, you can contact me or Mr. Deven, who is residing in Chennai area, and we can discuss more in detail. I'll just play a small video.
When we have a customer that has a problem or an industry that's suffering from a problem, we go directly to the folks that are running the machinery and we ask them what exactly are the problems that you're having.
If you ask anybody globally about surface treatments of feed screws, they would say, oh yeah, we use these people in Florida, Extreme Coatings.
Extreme Coatings specializes in applying high-velocity oxygen fuel coatings, otherwise known as HVOF, to surfaces to resist extreme applications of wear.
Automotive parts with glass fiber, metal injection molding, PVC corrosion resistance, all the ways that processing resins in an injection machine or an extruder can lead to rapid wear or corrosion of the components.
They make more money by not losing money by premature wear conditions. I'm Scott Kaplan. I'm the Executive Vice President.
My name is Greg Quinn, and I am Vice President of Sales for the plastics and rubber industry.
My name is Tom Kivinge. I'm in technical sales with Extreme Coatings, and I manage our facility in Bombay, India.
And my name is Curtis Cato. I'm the president and founder of Extreme Coatings.
The future for us is making this available throughout the world through global expansion.
Places like Dubai, Europe, China, South America.
We create supreme value that cost should not be an issue at all because payback is so significant.
People are willing to make this investment to have longer lived equipment. Feel free to contact us about any specific wear or corrosion issue that you're having.
We're looking forward to working with you to help solve any of your wear-resistant problems.
Okay, gentlemen, that's it. This is all I have for this presentation. Thank you very much.